Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We are going to wait just a few minutes and let you all join us. If you hop on, tell us where you're watching from. Say hi. Hi, Lindsay. Louisiana. Hi, Tammy from Texas. Nick and Margie, Ella and Shauna. We have Washington, Houston, Oklahoma. All right. We've got a few on here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a special guest with us today. We have Dr. Katie Young, and she is an equine nutritionist at Kentucky Equine Research, and she is going to talk about competing in the summer heat. Any questions that you have, get those in the comments. Dr. Young is here to answer those for you today. At the end of this segment, one lucky viewer is going to take home a bottle of Nano E, and you'll hear more about that in a little bit. And with that, Dr. Young, we are going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Got to apologize for my voice. I am in the middle of a bout with COVID. Yay. So, but if it doesn't get worse than this, I should hopefully survive. And I'm going to try and remember to mute before I cough so that y'all don't get blown out of the water with the coughing. So I actually, well, a little background about me. I've been an equine nutritionist for decades now, and I actually got my PhD in equine nutrition and exercise physiology from Texas A&M, and then stayed at A&M on the faculty for several years. Then left A&M and came to the Kansas City area where I still live. I worked as equine nutritionist and horse feed program manager for a big regional feed company that is no longer, it went bankrupt early 2000s. And so then I went on my own, was an independent, but contracted for quite a few years for a very large national feed company, and then was hired full-time with that feed company. So many of the formulas made by that feed company that y'all actually see out and about when you buy feed are, I formulated those feeds and provided technical support and was involved in production and regulatory and new products and the marketing and training salespeople. So just about everything having to do with providing horse feeds to the U.S. I was involved with. And then we parted ways a few years ago, and I have been working since then with Kentucky Equine Research as an equine nutritionist and helping KER support their customers and their partners. So that's kind of my background. I also am a horse person. I have my own horses. I have to buy feed and supplements from my horses. So I do feel your pain. I'm right in there with you. And so that's my background. Today I'm an eventer, but I grew up barrel racing as a kid. And then when I went to undergrad, I got into the hunter jumper world and just decided that jumping horses was the best thing ever. And then as I got older and kind of started breaking down and have a bad back now and some bad knees, and so I made the logical move to become an eventer because, what the heck? As you get older, you may as well have a death wish. So that's what I'm doing. And I also, I give lessons and train on the side in the Kansas City area. So again, I'm very involved in the horse industry. And so I can empathize with all of you when we're trying to do the best for our horses and make sure that we get all the right products and feed them the right things. So being that it is late July, and as I said, I'm on the Kansas side of Kansas City. So yeah, we've been dealing with some major heat. And since quite a few of y'all, as I said, I was in Texas for almost 10 years. Oh, the Texas heat is just lovely. And you can't stop riding your horse. You can't just say, okay, it's hot. I'm gonna quit riding for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. So we got to figure out how to maintain, support our horses through the heat as best we can so that they don't have problems. And I have a PowerPoint that you guys can't see. So that. But I'm going through the PowerPoint because it helps keep me organized in how I present information to you. But please, again, if you have questions, just post them. And I'm more than happy to answer questions as I go to make sure that I address your concerns and give you the information to help you in this endeavor. So basically what I'm going to cover or what I plan to cover is just the heat production during exercise, the horse's mechanisms. First, they produce heat while they exercise, but they do have mechanisms then to dissipate that heat so that their bodies don't overheat and go into heat stress. And then I'm going to talk about some of the symptoms and stages of heat stress. And actually, heat stress then can possibly, hopefully not, become heat stroke. So I will talk a little bit about making sure cooling your horse off and potential treatment of heat stroke. And then we'll talk a little bit more about managing, relieving heat stress in terms of water, horse's body condition, conditioning and fitness, and then in hauling, because if you're competing your horse in the heat, you're probably hauling your horse in the heat as well. And we'll talk a little bit about electrolytes and some other nutritional support for competing performance horses in the heat. And we're going to talk about anhydrosis because the further south you go, the more issues horses have with anhydrosis. First off, heat production. Excuse me, I'm going to mute and cough. Oh, I love coke. But see how good I am? I'm even coughing into my elbow. Although right now the only person around me is my dog, but good habits. So anytime a horse is exercising, their muscles are going to generate heat. It's very important to realize that. And so when the ambient temperature rises and the humidity rises, the muscles are generating heat and the horse has got to be able to dissipate the heat. And actually exercising can increase the horse's core body temperature, but by as much as 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit a minute. So if you think your horse's body temperature can be going up by almost 2 degrees a minute as you're exercising, that can be a great deal of internal heat generated. As I mentioned before, the horse's body has mechanisms to dissipate that heat. And some of them are more efficient than others. In general, in all species, in all animals, the 4 mechanisms for dissipating heat are going to be radiation, convection, conduction, and evaporation. And y'all may have actually learned some of that kind of stuff back in high school biology or at some point in your lives. I'll go through it a little bit more so you understand it if it's been a while since you've had such things in high school. So radiation is when heat moves between objects without the objects actually touching. And in horses, this is a minor mechanism for heat dissipation. Convection is the forced movement of cool air over the surface of warm skin, which helps to continuously push the heat away from the body. So when you are overheated and you go out and maybe you're in the shade and there's a breeze and you feel so much better, That's probably due to the convection. You're hot and the breeze is moving some of the heat off of you. Conduction is when heat transfers directly between two objects touching each other. That is more of a factor when the horse is sprayed with cold water. So the cold water, the water is much colder than the horse, and so the heat moves from the hot horse to the cold water. You also might be familiar with conduction because if you're kind of cool and you lean on your hot horse, then your horse's heat transfers to you. On the other hand, in the winter, when you're cold and you lean on your nice warm horse, you again have conduction of the horse's heat to you, so then it's a good thing. But the main way a horse dissipates heat is through evaporation, primarily through the sweat loss. So that liquid sweat covers the surface area of the horse, and then it gains kinetic energy from the body heat, which allows it to evaporate or vaporize. And in this process, the heat is dispersed. So again, the sweat is the horse's main method of thermoregulation in heat. It's really important to know, and that's not the same in all animals. For instance, dogs really don't sweat other than, I believe, through their pads and their nose. So they release a lot of their heat through panting, through the respiration. And if your horse is panting, you got to be worried about it because that's showing some heat stress. They're going to be sweat. The thing to realize there, though, is that extreme sweat loss can lead to dehydration because they're losing so much liquid, so much water in that sweat, that if you're not careful, that they're going to be dehydrated, and that can really get you started on a downward spiral of unhappy events. When the horse is heat stressed, for instance, in hot, humid conditions, the mechanisms become ineffective. For instance, if the ambient temperature is the same as the horse's body temperature, then dissipation of the body heat is definitely compromised, because if the temperatures are the same, that heat really, it's very hard for it to be dissipated. When the horse's core body temperature increases 5 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be exceeding 107 degrees Fahrenheit, and as I expect y'all know, the horse's normal body temperature is somewhere around 100 degrees. When it gets to 107 degrees, changes occur in the body in an attempt for the body to thermoregulate. So things really can start breaking down in that situation. The blood flow to the skin is going to maximize to help the dissipating the heat. So the blood is carrying heat with it. It goes to the skin in an effort then for the heat to transfer through the skin to the environment. But again, if the environment is hot and humid, that doesn't work well. But when that happens, the blood flow to the intestines is going to decrease because the blood flow is going to the skin. And that can cause leaky intestinal package and allow bacteria to enter the bloodstream. So then we can have toxic situations. That is not good. We also have decreased blood flow to the brain, which can cause the blood-brain barrier to break down. You can get swelling of the brain, and you can get injury to the nerves. You can also get direct damage to the cells due to exposure to increased temperature. The actual body cells, if it gets too hot, the cells start breaking down. The cells lining the blood vessels malfunction. That leads to the formation of blood clots and disseminated intravascular coagulation. So these are bad deals. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that we manage the horse to keep heat stress under control. And as I said, when the horse is sweating profusely, you also may run into problems with dehydration. So there are different stages of dehydration. Stage 1, which is just initial dehydration, one of the signs of that, you can watch for with first the skin pinch test, which if you're not familiar with the skin pinch test, you just take a fold of skin at the point of the shoulder and you just pinch it and release it. And the skin should snap back flat in less than a second. It should just go plop and back to being flat. The longer it takes to return back to flat, the more dehydrated the horse is. You can also look at the capillary reflex test. And in that one, you lift the horse's lip and you press on the horse's gum just above the upper incisor. And if it takes longer than 2 seconds, you press and then you release, and there's a little white spot where you've been pressing. And if it takes longer than 2 seconds for it to go back to pink, then that's telling you the horse is dehydrated. You can also look for elevated body temperature. If it's 1 or 2 degrees, that would be stage 1 of dehydration. You can look for dark urine, but quite honestly, if you're seeing dark urine, that's giving you an indication there's muscle tissue damage. So if you see dark urine, you've gone a ways into dehydration, and that's a time to really take account and reduce your horse's heat stress level. You may just see a dull expression or behavior. The horse just kind of starts zoning out. And you may see synchronous diaphragmatic flutter or thumps or exertional rhabdomyolysis, which is tying up. So those are all things that can happen in fairly early stages of dehydration. Heat exhaustion would be stage 2. And once a horse starts to dehydrate, they lose control of their body temperature. Their mechanisms for maintaining their core body temperature start breaking down. So when the body temperature reaches 104 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit, then we start really seeing the physiological changes. The sweating, which is the main mechanism, as I said, of thermoregulation, the sweating cooling mechanism may begin to fail. So the sweat glands are not functioning properly, and so the horse loses some ability to sweat. You also are going to see enzymes that control chemical reactions, which are heat sensitive, function best at about 98 to 104 degrees. So when the enzymes start breaking down, that even further impairs the horse's ability to regulate their internal heat. So warning signs of stage 2 or heat exhaustion would include a reduction or ceasing of sweating. Also, thickening of the sweat while the skin remains hot to the touch. A skin pinch that takes longer than 6 seconds to resolve or flatten. A capillary refill time, y'all heard, that's Olivia, my Australian Shepherd. There might be somebody on the street across the street from our house. Oh my Lord, we're in danger here. If I disappear, you'll know that the random passerby got to me. Thank you, Olivia. Appreciate her. She takes care of me. Okay, back. Skin pinch that takes longer than 6 seconds to flatten. Capillary refill time, which is when you press on the gums. If it's more than several seconds, that's a sign of heat exhaustion. And finally, if the horse does start panting, as I said before, that's something to be concerned about because horses in general do not pant. And then you can get to heat stroke. And heat stroke is equine heat exertional illness. And there are actually 4 levels of heat stroke. Speaking for the horse, we would appreciate it if nobody ever lets us get to level 1 of heat stroke. But just in case, to recognize at level 1 heat stroke, the horse's mentation is normal, which is basically their mental state. You can't see a difference yet in their mental state. But the horses are hot and distressed, they're sweating profusely, and the heart rate's going to be greater than 150 beats per minute. Level 2, the horse is irritable and uncooperative, frequent random kicking and head shaking, and subtle gait abnormalities. You're just starting to see this horse is not working normally. Things are really getting off track. Then level 3, you're really going to see the difference in the mentation. The horse is going to be depressed, possibly disoriented. That's incoordination can be present. So you're really going to see at this point the horse is off. And then level 4, which hopefully nobody's going to get to, is central nervous system dysfunction, which can lead to loss of consciousness, convulsions, coma, and death. And endotoxemia, which is back from the bacteria and toxins in the circulation. That's going to manifest as bright red mucous membranes and prolonged capillary refill times. So again, hopefully nobody's horse gets to this point. But in some situations, when you're exercising the horse in very hot, very humid conditions, and they cannot dissipate that heat, you can get to heat stroke quicker than you think. You've got to be aware of such things. The treatment of heat stroke would be to apply ice and cold water directly to the horse's body, focusing on large blood vessels in the head and neck, the abdomen, the large muscles, but basically get the horse wet. Cold water, and there's kind of a myth out there that you shouldn't use cold water. You got a horse with heat stroke, yeah, use cold water because that's going to reduce the body heat the quickest. And then the next question, okay, voice is going, got to take a drink. It's always good to have water. Okay. When you're hosing your horse for heat stress or heat stroke, do you scrape the water off? Basically, if you have continuous cold water, then it's okay to scrape it off and then keep the cold water coming. If you only have so much water, as the water warms up, I'd put some water on. When the water warms up, then scrape it off and put some more water on. If the water gets really warm on the horse and you leave it sit there, there's a thought that that could be insulating and further keep the heat in. But realistically, though, the water is going to evaporate. And so that evaporation also helps dissipate the heat. My biggest point, I guess, in this is that if you're going to be working a horse in heat and humidity, make sure you do have large amounts of cold water available. So if your horse overheats, you're not in a situation where you're going, I'm running out of water, I'm running out of ways to keep this horse cool. So again, a rapid decrease in the body temperature is achievable if you catch it early and you manage aggressively. So again, ice and cold water over the horse, get it cooled down as quickly as possible. Some other things, get it in the shade if possible. If there's a breeze, that's helpful. A fan on the horse is going to help help the evaporation process, plus the cool air moving over the warm body is going to help remove some of that heat. So all the things that even common sense tell you how to cool yourself off, most of those things will apply to your horse as well. Of course, if your horse is coming down, if you're seeing the symptoms of heat stress, severe heat stress, or heat stroke, one of your first things to do is going to be call a veterinarian, because you got to get the vet out. The vet's going to possibly sedate the horse, administer anti-inflammatories and intravenous fluids. So you want to get the horse out. But then again, as you're waiting for the vet, you want to do everything you can do to support the horse and help dissipate the heat. So at this point, are there any questions that?
Yep, we have a question. Doreen asked, what can we be doing to prevent anhydrosis? Does a lighter diet help, or fitness of a horse matter?
That is a great question, Doreen. And I have a whole little section on anhydrosis. So I'm going to hold that one off until we get to anhydrosis.
Okay.
So
Here's another one. I have a mini that doesn't sweat, or she does very little. I worry about overheating her when it's humid, so I don't work her as much. Any advice? Of course, I provide shade and fans.
Yeah, I think I'm going to, in the next few little topics, I'm going to cover a lot of that as well. Because the next thing I have on my slides is just cooling your horse off.
Okay.
Candace asked, how much does a sand arena in the heat affect the horse?
That is a good question. I really don't have a good answer for that, other than, a sand arena. When you feel that heat coming off the sand, yeah, that's going to have an effect. This is just, and we're getting out of my realm as an equine nutritionist here, but quite honestly, I would say a lighter cover, the lighter colored footings would actually absorb a little bit less heat, so they should be a little cooler for the horse to work on versus some footing that is really dark and is going to really absorb heat, referring to humans. And like when you walk your dog over black asphalt, you have to be really careful because that gets so hot from absorbing the sunshine, and then it radiates back up onto the people. So I think that's just something to be aware of when you're riding, what the footing is. And I would guess, I can't say with authority, but I would guess that riding on green grass surfaces is going to be a little bit less as far as increasing the heat stress on the animal. So again, we're out of my realm as an equine nutritionist, but those are my thoughts.
This is from Sarah. She said, I'm glad you mentioned the myth of watering the horse down. In your opinion, in the heat and after light work, is watering them down good for them?
Yes, that is my opinion.
Okay.
And with my own horses, when they sweat, I hose them off. If for no other reason, just to get the salt off of their skin. When you leave that sweat on the horse over time, that can be kind of compromising to the hair. And personally, I think it probably feels better to them. And when my horse is sweaty and hot and I hose them off, I don't usually scrape them. About the only times I scrape them is when they have to dry off quickly because, for instance, I have a 35-year-old old man who's got PPID and has that massive Cushing's hair coat. So I'll give him a bath and then he has to dry, so he gets body clipped. So that's the one time that I always scrape off the water. Oh goodness, we have a Amazon truck in our driveway.
It's bound to happen.
It's okay.
I don't know if the treats are going to.
We needed a little entertainment.
Oh, she came for the treat. Now she's run right back. Okay, can you guys hear me at all? Shall I keep talking while she's yelling? Livy.
What a good protector.
I can't believe he actually pulled into the driveway. And he's not delivered the package yet. Come on, guy.
You're perfectly fine.
Yep. You're good.
Okay, he's on the front porch and now he's leaving. Yay. Come on, Livy. Livy, come. Thank you, good girl. Sit. Sit. Thank you.
A live doorbell.
Yes. We're safe. Now she's got to growl to make sure he's left. She's a good herding dog. She protects her family. So that was Olivia, the Australian Shepherd. I'm glad you all got to meet her. So anyhow, that was the question on, hosing them off. Yeah. And again, the only, I think if they're hot and you're hosing them off, just keep hosing them. Just keep that cold water running on them until they cool off. And they're nice, comfortable temperature to the touch, or you can actually take take a rectal temperature and make sure that their temperature has dropped back down, getting towards normal. And the next thing I was going to talk about just is general cooling off, because we talked about what to do in the case of heat stroke or heat stress, but just cooling off a warmed up working horse. First, of course, you want to recognize the potential signs of overheating. But then if the horse is getting hot, stop riding. It's kind of funny. That's the first thing. Stop. Get off them. Take the saddle off. Move the horse into the shade. Keep walking them. Don't let them just stop and stand there, because sometimes you're going to run into problems with the muscles tying up. Utilize a breeze if it's possible. Let the horse drink to its fill while it's walking, and cold water is appropriate. That is another thing that people have thought, and for years and years, people have said, okay, don't let them drink to their heart's content. Make sure the water is not too cold because they're worried about tying up, laminitis, that sort of thing. But in reality, it's fine for the water to be cold because that helps cool down the core temperature. It's okay to let them drink as much as they want, but I would keep them walking. In my opinion, it's not the cold water that intake that is a risk of causing problems. It's if you've got an overheated horse, you go, you tie them up, you let them drink, and then they're just standing there and the muscles never get a chance to warm down. So, and then of course, splash or spray cold water. Monitor the horse's temperature. Within 10 minutes, you should see approximately 2-degree drop in temperature. You can stop using the cold water once the temperature drops to 101 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, and the respiration is approaching normal. And in this situation, when the horse is just really heated, as long as the horse returns to normal within an hour, you shouldn't need to call the vet. If the horse does not return to normal within an hour, then definitely call the vet. So how do you manage the horse when it's hot? And you still want to work the horse because, as I said, you don't want to just take a break for all the hot months of the summer. If possible, work the horse when the temperature and humidity are most appropriate. So there was a time in Kansas, this week has actually been pretty darn decent temperatures, but as you guys know, last week before were pretty miserable, and I am not a morning person, but I was dragging out of bed every morning so I could get to the barn and do lessons and ride horses before it got too hot. So just think about what's the temperature, what's the humidity. One of the common predictors that we can use, because the question may come, well, what's an appropriate temperature and humidity? One of the predictors of heat stress is taking the ambient temperature in degrees Fahrenheit and adding that to the relative humidity, which is in a %. So you add those two numbers together, that's going to give you a total. And when the temperature plus humidity is less than 130, heat loss shouldn't be a problem. If you add temperature plus humidity and it's greater than 150, then heat loss can be severely compromised, and especially if the humidity is greater than 50% of the total. That's when you really got to start thinking, okay, maybe this isn't the best time to ride my horse, or if I do, this may not be a time to work the horse hard. Maybe we do groundwork. Maybe we do a lot of things just at the walk. But when it's greater than 170 to 180, very little heat loss can occur, and some experts recommend not working or competing your horse. So just as an example, I'm just going to go to my weather app and see what it is right now. In Kansas, it is 82, and the humidity is 67%. So if you take 82 plus 67, that's 149. Even though it's 82, which is not a bad temperature, it is so humid, it's going to feel pretty warm. So at 149, if I were out riding my horse right now, I probably wouldn't be doing a lot of collection, a lot of jumping, just would be doing a lot of walk, trot, bending, getting the top line round, that kind of thing. So just got to be sensible about how to work our horses. Personally, I'm home in the air conditioning right now. And the other thing, be aware of the environment, because if you've got fans or good airflow, let's say you're in an indoor arena, you've got good ventilation and the air is moving, then that helps increase the loss of heat through convection. And shade reduces radiation. Shade also may reduce evaporation, but if you've got a shaded area and you've got some air coming through, then you may be able to do a lot more work than if you're out, outdoor arena, blazing sunshine, or actually the barn where I'm at, we have an indoor arena, but we really don't have a lot of ventilation in the arena, so we have to be very aware of that lack of air movement. It gets pretty stuffy in there. And again, we got to think about our horse's comfort. Management of heat as far as water. Something to always think about, provide clean, fresh water pretty much whenever the horse wants water. The horse's water intake varies by body weight, sweat loss, which is affected by exercise, heat, and humidity, and then also the diet. And a maintenance 1,100-pound horse actually drinks about 4 to 9 gallons a day, but an exercise 1,100-pound horse may drink more than 20 gallons a day. So when they exercise, their water intake really goes up because they can be losing a great deal of water through sweat. And I really didn't talk much about how much sweat a horse can lose, but I actually did, part of my graduate research was on electrolyte and sweat loss in horses. And on one of my projects, we had off-the-track thoroughbreds and just exercised to double their calorie requirements, which was 6 miles of hand galloping a day. And they would lose about 20 pounds of water in sweat. That is a lot of water loss. And as they're losing all that water, they're also losing a whole lot of electrolytes. And I will talk about electrolytes. So sweat loss can be very debilitating to the horse if you don't replace the water and sometimes the electrolytes. You also want to make sure that you encourage water consumption while you're traveling and possibly competing on the road. May help to carry water from home. Some horses get away from home and just don't want to drink. So in that case, if you carry water from home, you may be encouraging them to drink, or you might want to use electrolytes or flavors in your water. Get them used to that at home so that when you go somewhere, you can put the same flavor in local water, and hopefully they will still drink it because they say, oh, that smells and tastes the same. You also want to offer water when you're hauling. A lot of horses won't drink it, but sure doesn't hurt to offer it. And you can also offer water. There are either hay cubes, or there are some products out there that are basically hay that absorb water. Something like that, if you get a horse used to that, that can be a very big help when hauling. So your horse isn't just drinking the water, it may be eating the water that's absorbed into the hay product. Other thing to think about is a horse's body condition, which is how fat or thin that horse is. And if you folks listening aren't familiar with the body condition scoring system, I highly recommend you do learn that, because that is a very, it's a very subjective, it's really more of an objective method to determine whether your horse is overweight, underweight, or just right. And if the horse is overweight, and in a lot of disciplines, an overweight horse looks nice, and we tend to have horses that are overweight rather than underweight or just right. But that excess weight will increase the workload when you're working them, and the excess body fat is also a very good insulator and keeps body heat in and reduces the dissipation. So you want to keep the horse at a moderate body weight, which is about a body condition score of 5. The Kentucky Equine Research website has a great body condition score chart and some articles on body condition scoring, so you can teach yourself how to use that. Your vet should be able to help you in using body condition scoring. Your state extension specialists and extension agents, there's lots of people out there if you're not familiar with body condition scoring, but do get familiar with that. And for performance horses in general, we want them about a body condition score of 5, which is moderate. I also want to think about your horse's actual, not body condition, but their fitness condition. Because if your horse is more fit and more conditioned, they are able to withstand heat and possibly produce less heat in working, but also the mechanisms for dissipating heat are going to be the best they can because the horse is acclimated. So you want to slowly build up the horse's fitness level and stamina as heat and humidity increase. Hopefully at this point in the summer, you're not just starting to compete. You already in the spring, came through the winter, you started conditioning your horse for the summer of competition, and by now your horse is fit and acclimated to the heat so that they can dissipate and are as healthy as possible. Looks like, are there some questions?
Yes.
Okay.
The one was about electrolytes, which I think Are there electrolytes that we can add to the water to help? That was from Lee.
Yes, there are. And I have a whole section coming on electrolytes.
On that. Okay. I think you answered that one.
Yeah.
Watering down.
It's about electrolytes. Okay. Just reading through these here.
This one.
Yeah. And that's about electrolytes. Okay. It's coming.
Keep going. Okay.
A whole section on electrolytes.
Candace's question, is that about watering?
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. Maybe that one.
Candace says, I was always taught to start at the legs and work up. Is this a myth? I would assume maybe about watering, but
Yeah.
when hosing.
When
Yep.
hosing.
When you're hosing, in my opinion, in general, you're starting at the legs because you don't want your horse to, freak out. If the water suddenly is splatting on their neck or their side, and it's just kind of a desensitization that you start at the leg. But when you are trying to get water on the horse to help dissipate the heat, it's over the body. You want to get the water over the body because they don't dissipate. There's not a lot of muscles, especially in the lower leg, that are producing the heat. It's where the body has a lot of muscles and a lot of blood flow that's where you really want to. So you see horses, if you've ever been to Land Rover, Kentucky 3-day event, and the horses come off cross country and they're just sitting there and there's just water going all over them. So yeah, over their whole body.
A good question. Leanne had asked, will watering down flakes of hay do the same or work the same?
As far as increasing hydration, not as much, because the hay is not very good at absorbing water. So a lot of times when you soak the hay, the hay's really not absorbing the water. It's just the water soluble nutrients are being absorbed by the water from the hay. So the products that I'm talking about are one of them. I'll just mention by name. It's called Hydration Hay, and this is a formula that actually it's a 2-pound chunk of hay that will absorb about up to about 10 times its weight in water, and then just makes a big slurry. Alfalfa cubes can be used for that because the alfalfa cubes will absorb some water. Pelleted forage products are pretty good at absorbing water. So if you find something that your horse is finding really palatable, then that's a way. Even a mash. If you take a feed that they really like, a pelleted feed, make it into a mash, that can help get some more water. But yeah, just putting water on the hay is not really going to significantly increase their hydration.
All right. Lindsay had a question. What's the best way to approach water consumption while using Lasix?
I've got a product to recommend when we get to electrolytes.
Okay. And then I don't know
I think that
if we want that.
Yeah, maybe ask that one. Okay, this is kind of a long question. Jessica says, I have a senior, OTTB, 21 years old, who has chronic liver disease and in remission from EPM. Is there anything I would need to keep more in mind during the heat, and especially at shows? We event in dressage. He's one that sweats very easily. He is on a forage diet, alfalfa, Timothy pellets, beet pulp, and added Triple Crown Senior as he needs to gain weight. Free choice, Timothy hay.
That's the kind of same thing. That would be a really good one to do, kind of an individual consultation. Liver disease is a tricky one, but they can recover from that. And I think it said that the horse was underweight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. then a refeeding protocol might be helpful to get, because forages tend to be fairly low in calories, but when you're getting more calories into a horse with liver disease, you have to be careful of the form that the calories come in. So that there are some good things to do to help that horse, but I would encourage her to maybe contact us through KER.com and ask for some specific recommendations for that horse. You guys disappeared for a minute, but I know you're still there.
Oh, we're here.
We're here.
But yeah, for something that's so individual, checking in with one of our nutrition advisors at KER, and you also, through the nutrition advisor, you can get to one of the PhDs as well. But yeah, there's some things that may help that horse.
Okay. I think that might be it for now. So
Okay.
Most of them were on electrolytes,
Yep.
so.
I'm on my way to electrolytes. So before I get there, though, I've got a few more things. Wanted to talk quickly about managing the heat when you're hauling the horse, because I found this and I thought this was pretty interesting. Just ventilation in your horse trailer. There is some research on ventilation, and one study reported average air exchange rates were actually only half of what was recommended for stable horses when the horses were being hauled in a trailer. This is when all the windows and the vents were fully open and at the highest speed. Still was not adequate air exchange rates. I found that really amazing. They also said, and this makes sense, that stall 1, this would be in a slant load trailer. The stall 1, which is nearest to the front of the trailer, had the least air exchange. So that's where the horse is going to be the hottest. When you're hauling, what you really want to do is maximize the air exchange. So if you're buying a trailer, that's kind of nice. Look for big windows, look for maximum ventilation. If you already have your trailer, then if possible, increase your window size. Make sure your windows are open. Open or removing the upper rear doors. I know when I haul, I keep the aprons of the rear doors, unless I'm hauling in the winter, I just keep them open all the time. And of course, look for maximum ventilation before you buy a horse trailer. Okay, I'm now ready for electrolytes. First off, what are electrolytes? Sodium, potassium, chloride are the main electrolytes. Magnesium is also considered electrolyte, but in the sweat, like I said, I did my research on sweat loss. Primarily sodium, potassium, and chloride were the electrolytes present in the sweat. This is one of the tricky things with horse sweat. As I said, sweating is the main method of dissipating heat in horses. Well, if you look at horse sweat compared to human sweat, horse sweat is more concentrated in electrolytes than human sweat. When you compare it to blood, human sweat is less concentrated in electrolytes than blood. Horse sweat is more concentrated in electrolytes than blood. And as a human sweats, over time and with acclimation, their sweat becomes more dilute in electrolytes. You don't see that in horses. Their sweat starts out more concentrated in electrolytes and stays there. This is why it is so easy for a horse to lose too many electrolytes when they're sweating a lot. We usually recommend that you have free choice salt available for horses. And for horses at maintenance, that is probably adequate because potassium is pretty plentiful in forages. So maintenance horse is most likely going to be getting adequate potassium from their forages, but feeds and forages are often low in sodium chloride or salt. We want to, so the recommendation is then, sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to mute for a minute and have a big cough. Don't get COVID.
Good advice.
It is not fun. Okay, back to salt. At maintenance, just offering free choice salt, either a salt block, adding some salt to their ration. Just free choice salt should get enough sodium and chloride to meet maintenance requirements. And actually, that's what I saw in my research when I was in grad school. But when the horse is at moderate to heavy work, or just in an environmental situation that they're sweating a lot, so just standing in the pasture, sweating because it's so hot and humid, then electrolyte supplementation is going to be helpful. Somebody may say, what kind of salt? White salt is just fine. Does not have to be that interesting brown trace mineralized salt block, because that just has enough trace minerals to make it the interesting color. It's still, if you look at the tag, it's like 98, 99% salt. So my recommendation is just, save your money and buy white salt. But when you've got the sweating horse that's losing so many electrolytes, then you actually want to get an electrolyte supplementation. So KER, we've got a couple different supplement programs you can use, and this is going to relate back, the one you choose may relate back to the use of Lasix or furosemide. So if you're supplementing with electrolyte, in this case, you do want something that has sodium, potassium, and chloride. When you look at the electrolyte supplement, look at the tag, you don't want to see a whole lot of sugar. A lot of times the electrolytes will have some sort of sugar like dextrose in there. The thought is that sugar may increase the absorption of the electrolytes in the horse's gut. And electrolytes are really bioavailable. You don't need anything to increase absorption. So I get something that is just really electrolytes. For our KER product, we have Restore SR, which is designed really to supply the electrolytes in proportions and amounts to replace what they lose in the sweat. So you can do daily supplementation of Restore SR, and it's available as both a powder and also a paste. So if the horse is sweating profusely or over a long period of time due to exercise or environmental conditions, then we do recommend daily supplementation. You may want to supply only during periods of increased sweating, whether again work or environment. You can do the single dose, which will cause an immediate surge in blood electrolytes, but that also, if you just do a single dose, that also stimulates the increased excretion of electrolytes. So in that situation, we still recommend some daily supplementation, or at least start the supplementation before you know you're going to be going to a situation where the horse is sweating profusely. Now, for horses that are on furosemide, that's a whole different deal, because furosemide is a diuretic, which will increase water loss from the horse. And it increases water loss through urinary loss, and the urinary loss takes more minerals with it. So the urinary mineral loss is going to be different from the typical electrolyte sweat loss. And in research on horses on furosemide, the horses that are losing after an exercise bout, and they've lost weight due to this extra water loss from the diuretic, but excuse me again, I'm going to cough. Okay, so the research on the furosemide, even though they lose more water, lose more minerals, lose more weight, after the exercise and weight loss and sweat loss bout, you do not see increased water intake on these horses. So it really is a big deal to try and get the water, to get the horses rehydrated. And so the product that we would recommend for that is actually, I'm trying to make my screen a little bit bigger so I can make sure I get all the recommendations correct. The race recovery system is the electrolyte system that is designed for horses on furosemide. So it's got a different electrolyte and mineral balance that, number one, it replaces the minerals that are lost through the urinary system as well as the sweat. And the race recovery is designed to help stimulate water increase after the bout. So that would, if you've got a horse on furosemide, that's going to be the product that I'm going to recommend. And feed it according to recommendations, because on that one, you're going to feed the powder. It also is available as a powder or as a paste. You're going to feed it as the powder form, and then you're going to use the paste a couple times directly, timed dosages after exercise, again, to help with restoring those minerals and helping to basically persuade the horse to increase their water intake to get them past the excess water loss and dehydration that may occur. So did that answer the electrolyte questions, other than something that you can put in the water to mask the taste? So quite honestly, you could use these electrolytes in the water to mask the taste. I'm a bigger fan of putting it in the feed, so you know that they're getting, on the electrolytes, they're getting the right dose. So personally, if I'm going to mask, I might just get a cheap electrolyte supplement that has some sort of flavor added. Or I've known people that just use like gelatin. Just go get some Jello powder and get your horse used to strawberry Jello powder in their water. And that usually works to get them used to to different tastes of water.
Tammy asked, is it okay to give electrolytes daily? With this Texas heat, I want them to keep drinking while in the stalls.
Absolutely. One of the nice things with electrolytes, if you overdo the electrolytes, sodium, potassium chloride, the horse just excretes them in the urine or sweat. So it's really hard to go wrong, except, and this is one of my favorite big word complexes, psychogenic salt consumption disorder. Doesn't that sound impressive?
My goodness.
It's just a disorder in which your horse stands there and eats the salt. So you give the horse a big salt block and your horse stands and eats the salt block, then don't give them a big salt block, because that's just a disorder. Some horses, I don't know if they like the taste of salt or it's just they're bored or whatever. If they're just standing there eating the salt, take that away from them and just put some salt or electrolyte in their feed so they're not overdoing it. But other than that, of my horses, one of them really likes salt, and he'll just stand there and he'll lick the salt. He really likes the Himalayan salt, and it's not a big difference in Himalayan salt versus a white salt block, but Connor likes Himalayan salt, and he's worked hard his whole life. So by golly, I'm going to buy Himalayan salt for Connor. Nobody else gets it. The old man, the 35-year-old, barely touches his salt. So, but they do both. Neither of them are working hard. Neither of them are sweating hard. They both get some salt in their feed. And if they were working hard, then yes, I would be using electrolyte supplementation to make sure that they are getting what they need. So the other supplements I wanted to talk about are antioxidants. So antioxidant support is important, especially with working horses and stressed horses, because work and stress cause muscle damage. Anytime you work the horse is going to undergo some muscle damage. And so the goal is then to try to reduce the damage. And you can do that to some extent by conditioning your horse, getting them fit, but they're still going to have some muscle damage. You also want to feed them and support so you can help maintain and repair the muscle damage that is going to happen. Antioxidants then will help in maintaining performance and recovery post-exercise, because it helps to minimize the muscle tissue damage and helps in the repair. Nutritionally, what we want to do is make sure to feed an appropriate ration that has all the nutrients that the horse needs for muscle tissue, just maintenance and repair of the damage. And that, of course, is going to include adequate protein or essential amino acids. We need to make sure we have appropriate vitamins and minerals, because those are all going to be involved in muscle tissue maintenance and repair. And then antioxidants, which can help in minimize the damage by kind of basically protecting the muscle fiber cell membranes. So the typical antioxidants, there's a lot of nutrients that have antioxidant properties, and many of them are provided if you're using a good balanced feed, fed is recommended, and good quality hay. You're probably going to have all the minerals you need. Copper is involved, selenium is involved. Those are minerals with antioxidant properties. Vitamin E is, well, vitamin A also has antioxidant properties, but usually rations are pretty suitable for vitamin A content. But vitamin E is one that a lot of horses can actually be deficient in vitamin E, and we're not even aware. Green grass is a great source of vitamin E, but once that grass is cut, the vitamin E activity does not last long. So hay that is several months old is no longer a good source at all of vitamin E. And sometimes feeds contain adequate vitamin E, but sometimes they don't. So if a horse is on a high hay diet and you're not feeding a lot of extra feed or supplemental vitamins, minerals, vitamin E is one that I would highly recommend you look at supplementation. And of course, at KER, we have Nano E, which is the most bioavailable form of natural vitamin E in that it's an aqueous micellized form of natural vitamin A. So that is a great one to supplement. You can supplement at maintenance. If your horse is on a primarily hay diet, it's not a bad idea to make sure they're getting some vitamin E. And then the other supplement would be the Coenzyme Q10, which that actually has gotten quite a bit of interest in human athletes. But we've just started really investigating in horses, and it's been showing we've got some really good results on supplementing coenzyme Q10 to performance horses, again, as an antioxidant. So the KER product there is Nano Q10. So those are excellent antioxidants for performing and stressed horses through competition season.
Amanda asked, what are the symptoms of vitamin E deficiency?
Oh, that's a good one. It's tough. It's really hard to tell unless you have the blood tested for vitamin E, because a lot of these deficiencies, vitamin E, if they're really not getting enough, you might see some sort of muscle myopathies. Anytime a horse ties up, we recommend supplemental vitamin E as an antioxidant. Sometimes you just see kind of an effect on performance. They're not performing quite to the level that you expect or that they used to. But again, just having your vet run a blood test and testing for blood levels of vitamin E. I've got a friend who runs an equine nutrition Facebook page, and she just had a big conversation. Some people, she's an independent nutritionist, and some people were reporting they were on feeding programs that should have been meeting the horse's vitamin E requirements, but on blood tests, the horses were showing low serum vitamin E concentrations. So that's just her recommendation is that you have baseline vitamin E testing on your horses. I've never gone to that extent. I always make sure I know the products I feed, and I make sure that I am I trust, like the Nano E. I know it's got the vitamin E content that it says it does. The feeds I feed, I know it has a vitamin. There you go. And I know they have the vitamin E content that they're supposed to. So I'm not too worried about my horses. But yeah, it's not a bad idea to talk to your vet and check and make sure that their vitamin E is where it should be. And the other thing, my horses are, where I keep them, they're on green grass. They're actually, the turnout is on pasture year round. So in the summer, they go out at night. And so from about 4 p.m. to 7 a.m., they're out on green grass, which again is a great source of vitamin E. So I'm really not worried about it. And Mother Nature kind of does a good job, because vitamin E, being a fat-soluble vitamin, is actually stored in the body. So when the horse is out on green grass, you know, and it's storing vitamin E while it's getting lots of vitamin E from the green grass, that's usually enough, especially at maintenance, to get them through the winter. But of course, in our world, lots of horses aren't on green grass. Lots of horses are expected to do something for a living besides just stand around and look cute. And so those horses, their vitamin E requirements are higher. And so it's a good idea to really make sure that their requirements are met. And as I said, the performance horses, it's really good to make sure that they've got a good source of vitamin E, antioxidants to support those muscles.
How much vitamin E do you recommend? Can you overdose?
That's one of the nice things with the fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin E is a hard one to get a toxicity. You would be spending so much money on vitamin E to run into a problem. For a maintenance horse, the recommendation for an 1,100-pound horse is about 600 international units per day. And that goes up, I think, at high work load, it may be about double that. But then again, if the horse has got any muscle myopathies, then there are therapeutic levels of vitamin E as well. So my general recommendation is if you want to, well, Nano E has nice recommendations on the label. So I would recommend, if you want to look at a vitamin E supplement, get a good one like Nano E and then follow label recommendations. It will have, I think the minimum therapeutic amount is about an additional 2,000 units per day. And for some of these muscle myopathies, we'll get to 5,000 units per day. And sometimes it can go, some people will go 10,000 a day. But that's, again, it's not going to really be problematic.
All right.
Okay, before I lose my voice entirely, I probably ought to talk about anhydrosis. So real quick, I'm going to mute and cough. Okay. Once again, don't get COVID. It's just not any fun. And I've got a mild case. The people who get it bad. Oh. Anhydrosis. So if you're not familiar with anhydrosis, these are horses that are incapable of sweating normally. And I'm guessing the people who are asking about anhydrosis are people in the South, because up in the North, we do not see it nearly as much. When I was in Texas, I had a lesson horse that quit sweating in the summer. And it's a problem because when they're not sweating, they can't dissipate heat. Don't really understand what's going on, except we do know the sweat glands are not functioning properly. And so some of these horses, they quit sweating in the summer, and when the weather cools off, they start sweating again. Sometimes you may see horses that once they quit sweating, they just really don't. It doesn't come back. Some horses may be a complete absence of sweating. Others, it's just inadequate. You may have a horse that you still pull the saddle off and there's some sweat under the saddle, but their neck's not sweating. And you got other horses that are at the same workload and they're just dripping in sweat. So I did want to mention the horse that came up that had the liver disease that sweated profusely. I would so much rather see profuse excess sweating and just make sure that I get electrolytes and water back into him versus a horse that doesn't sweat, because a horse that doesn't sweat can become life-threatening pretty quick. Consult a veterinarian. I would love to say this is the cure for anhydrosis, but we don't have a cure for anhydrosis. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence for various methods. Some people say electrolytes. Some people say give them beer. Some people say it's got to be, I think, Guinness works best of the beers. I would say if you've got an anhydrotic horse, talk to your vet, try things. Because sometimes, again, anecdotal evidence is some of these may work. My lesson horse, nothing worked. In the summer, Buster would quit sweating. And I was in Texas. I put a sprinkler in the arena, turned it on at the beginning of the lesson. And when Buster started flaring in his nostrils and getting a little hot, I'd say to the kid, go stand in the sprinkler. And he would get wet. and he would dry off and the evaporation would cool him down. Of course, all the kids then would say, I want to go stand in the sprinkler too. And everybody would get wet and we'd all have to clean, tack, and oil it. It's great fun. But it's also a heritable condition, which means there's evidence that it's inherited and passed down. And there has been a mutation, a genetic mutation found that might be responsible for chronic idiopathic anhidrosis, or CIA. But there's a lot about anhidrosis that at this point we don't know. The one thing that usually works is sending the horse north. For some people, that's just not an option. So be aware of it. Keeping them, again, spraying them off with water, keeping them under fans, keeping them in a less hot, humid situation. But be aware, plenty of cool water. There is a thought that feeding them a higher fat diet, because the digestion of fat yields less heat than the digestion of carbohydrates or protein. So feeding fat to reduce the heat increment might help, but it's a problem. Okay, what else do I have? Okay, anhydrosis management. Avoid overheating horses in warm climates. Allow 10 to 14 days for horses to become familiar with a warmer climate before beginning work. Some people recommend up to 3 months of acclimation. If you bought a horse if you're in Texas and bought a horse from somewhere north, be aware of that. Don't just expect them to get to Texas in the summer and go to work. Give them time to acclimate. Provide plenty of cool water and supplemental electrolytes. Ensure horses are properly cooled and rinsed after exercise. Exercise during cooler times of the day, such as early morning. And note symptoms early and manage the horse to keep it comfortable and avoid heat stress. So I'm at my take-home message. So do we have any questions that have come in?
No, I don't think so. No.
So for those of you who asked about anhydrosis, if you could just kind of jump on and let us know if I've answered those questions thoroughly for you. Or you've gotten tired of listening to me be sick and you went away.
I know that one was answered, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while you're scouring.
Oh.
Okay.
I think most of them were answered.
Okay. So I'll just kind of go, the take-home message. Be aware of situations that put your horse at risk of heat stress. Manage the horse to avoid dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke, of course. So think about adjusting the work schedule and the intensity, provide adequate water, ensure proper body condition score, that your horse is not too fat, fitness level, give them time to acclimate to the weather conditions. When you're hauling, traveling, think about heat stress when the horse is hauled. Provide appropriate electrolytes, free choice salt, electrolyte supplement as needed, and remember the difference if your horse is on furosemide versus not. And then feed to support performance and stress levels. So your total ration to provide protein, amino acids, appropriate calories to support their workload. You can measure that with body condition score. If you're giving them too many calories, your horse gets fat. That's really easy. If you're not giving them enough calories, they lose body condition score and you're going to be able to see ribs. So calories are easy, but protein, vitamins, and minerals, you can kind of monitor protein by top line. If you're working your horse and you can't get a good top line, that very well may mean you've got inadequate either quantity or quality of protein in the diet. So be aware of that. Make sure they're getting adequate vitamins and minerals to support muscle maintenance and recovery, and supplement with bioavailable antioxidants as appropriate. And then the last take home was recognize and manage anhidrosis. And then one more thing for everybody to be aware of. Kentucky Equine Research does have monthly promotions. And so the July promotion is 15% off any of the antioxidant products. So as I talked about, the Nano E or the Nano Q10, if you order it through the KER website, you can use the code recovery22. But I'm also going to recommend that you order it through Valley Vet as your other option, because I gotta say, Valley Vet is right down the road from me, and I get a lot of things from them. And you guys have always been great, and the shipping is great. I had a fan that broke down too quickly, and I called your customer service, and y'all were going to send me a whole new expensive fan, and it's going, wow, you guys are great. And then I realized the fan wasn't turning on because my nerd great big horse had reached up and pulled on the chain. And I realized that when I found the knob from the end of the chain in his stall. So it was not your fault. It was not. But so that is my blurb for Valley Vet.
All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. What great conversation. Lots of great questions. And I think that we have a winner.
Oh, winner.
One lucky winner is going to win a bottle of the Nano E.
And the winner today is Lindsay Dupree.
Yay! Yay! Congratulations.
All right. And also, before we get off of here, we want to mention one more time, the Giddy Up shopping trip is going on now. The deadline for it is August 5th, and you can win a $350 Ariat shopping spree along with giving one to your friend. So make sure you get entered in that before it's over. So,
and if anybody needs any nutritional help, please always feel free to contact us at Kentucky Equine Research. KER.com is the website, and we're more than happy to help you. Again, a gal with horse with liver disease, please feel free to contact us, because that's when I'd like to help you get down and address some of those situations.
Very good. And then join us again next Wednesday. We will be live with Dr. Tony, and he will be talking about, I don't know how to pronounce that, and just join us live. Thank you, Dr. Young, so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.